here.
Hello, I'm Debbie Kitterman.
And I'm Brandy Kitterman.
And we are here to equip you
and challenge you
to dare to hear the voice of God. And Happy New Year!
Happy New Year!
That's right. This is the first podcast of the new year, 2022. I don't know about you, but I hope you had a good time and that you were able to listen to last week's podcast where I released the word that the Lord gave me for 2022. And if you haven't, it's okay. Take time to go back. But there was this urgency in this thing, Brandy, that I shared about making sure we clean the slate and that we purify and cleanse our hearts and repent so that we could enter into 2022 brand new, ready to go so that God could release us into it. And, you know, I had a hard time talking about trying to label, like, what was I going to title the word for 2022?
Let me tell you, there were 3 titles in there.
Yeah, there were. So 2022, possessing the promised land. 2022.
Well, that wasn't even in there.
No, I know. I didn't even give you that.
There were more than 3 titles, guys.
There were. And then all my notes were all messed up last week. So hopefully that didn't show when I was doing that. But let's see. Victory in 2022. Then 2022, a season of joy, rest, and victory. And I don't even remember what the third title was that was on there.
It's just word for 2022.
Yeah, word for 2022. Because I couldn't decide because there's so much that is just exciting. But what I really feel like is that we need to be prepared for the coming season. And you and I were supposed to talk about this topic, know your season, back in December. But then I had this special musical guest that came on and she had a Christmas album. And so we bumped it. But I actually think God's timing is perfect for this.
It's funny how that all works out, right?
Isn't it funny how that all works out? And so what I want to talk about is I taught a piece of this when I was teaching at a conference in Nashville back at the end of October. And the Lord really told me that I needed to go back to the beginning. And what that meant was back to the beginning of Dare to Hear. So a little history, Dare to Hear is a ministry that God gave me. And I have my training manual that I wrote at that time. And I launched the conference. Graham Cook spoke at our kickoff conference. It was so awesome. I shared the stage with Graham Cook and he invited me and the person that I was partnering with, and we came and ministered at his conference later that year. And it was just awesome. But it was also in that process that the Lord had me write the Releasing God's Heart Through Hearing His Voice, which is my classes that are going to start on January 18th.
You don't want to miss those.
You don't want to miss these. These, I usually only teach these live, wherever I'm at, but we've decided to do this in Zoom, live via Zoom. And so what we're going to do is you can go sign up, you can register, you can sign up on my website. The link will be in the show notes. And it's basically every Tuesday for 8 weeks, 7 weeks in the book, Releasing God's Heart. And then, but this 8th week is going to be a bonus week. And I'm really excited about that. But basically I'm going to teach for 20 to 45 minutes. Then we're going to do activation exercises and we're going to get to know one another. We're going to minister to one another. We're going to fine tune our hearing. And so when I was speaking on this Know Your Season back in Nashville at that conference, and the Lord said, go back to the beginning. So Dare to Hear, and the name and what I spoke at that very first conference was on Elijah. And it wasn't titled Know Your Season, but it was Dare to Hear the Voice of God. This is the name of the ministry. Dare to Hear the Voice of God, hear, see, and obey.
Yep.
Because it's not really cool just to hear or to see. We actually have to walk it out and we have to obey. But the piece that the Lord gave me as I was going back and looking at this, and Elijah, I feel like my life is so connected. If you've read my book, The Gift of Prophetic Encouragement, I share a little bit of my story and about Elijah and Elisha and about how the person that I was working for at that time, I was just trying to figure out, is this what God has for me? And she was like, no. And then God said, well, go back and ask her about Elijah and Elisha. And so I feel like Elijah and Elisha, I'm really connected to them. They're some of my favorite characters in the Bible because I learned so much from them, but especially Elijah, because I mean, how many times have we had some amazing feats of God? And then the next minute we're like, I just want to quit. I just want to throw in the towel and be done.
Yeah.
And so the Lord said, go back to the beginning, but we need to know our season. I think it's really important. And this ties in with part of the word for 2022 about discernment and discernment being essential in this season for us. And so let's just kind of talk about Elijah.
Mhm.
So we pick up Elijah in 1 Kings 17, and Elijah has just pronounced a drought on the nation. And he basically says, oh, hey, by the way, it's not going to rain here until I say it's going to rain here. And then God told him to go to this ravine at Kerith. And he's there and he's being fed by a raven and he's getting water by a brook.
Mhm.
Okay, except for the man just prophesied a drought. But he's being obedient to the Lord, right? So the story, if you pick it up in First Kings, I mean, it's just amazing because here he's walking in the supernatural of God. He prophesies that it's not going to rain in that nation because God is really upset with the kings at the time, King Ahab and his wife Jezebel and what they're doing. And this is not the only interaction that Elijah has with Ahab and Jezebel. In fact, the whole dare to hear comes from after he killed all the prophets of Baal and Jezebel's like, I'm going to get you. And then he runs and he goes up on the mountaintop and God comes in and he's not in the wind and he's not in the fire and he's not in the earthquake, but he's in the still small voice. And that's where dare to hear came from. So when the Lord said, I want you to go back to the beginning, I was like, go back to the beginning, go back to the beginning. And really it was a story about Elijah. So Elijah is sent to be fed by the ravens and to drink from the brook because they want to kill him.
Right.
I mean, hello. I mean, who wants to be a prophet in the Old Testament?
This is like the definition of shooting the messenger.
I know.
I'm just saying.
He's like, well,
these prophets are just doing what they're told.
God told me. But so here's as we walk through kind of this little season that gets Elijah from 1 Kings 17 to where we're going to end is that this is him walking out what God has spoken to him. And he doesn't know because God's called him into the wilderness. God's called him into an isolated place in this ravine at Kerith. Now, Kerith's name, the name Kerith means it was a place of faith, trust, provision, and protection, right? God was protecting him from those that wanted to kill him. He was also providing for him, but Elijah had to learn faith and trust. He couldn't go out and hunt and kill.
No.
And he was being sustained by the ravens bringing him food and then the brook. But then the brook dries up like most things do when there's a drought in the land.
Yep.
And so then God told him to get up and to go to Zarephath where there was a widow and a son. And God had already prepared this. So now he has to get up and he's got to have faith. He's got to have trust that God's going to provide again. So there's provision, there's protection, and then there's a miraculous healing that happens. And, sometimes this know your season, this discern your season is so important for us because I think sometimes we can feel that God is moving us to do something else, but we're so stuck in what's comfortable or what we know.
Yeah.
But God, I came here and I trusted you. And so you fed me by the ravens. Why do I have to go to a widow and her son? Why can't I just stay here? Why can't you just make the brook continue to happen? Like supernaturally continue to feed me. But God was shifting his season. He was adding another layer to what he wanted to do in Elijah's life. So in Kerith at the ravine, we have faith, trust, provision, and protection. And then at Zarephath with the widow, we have faith, protection, trust, and provision. But then God adds a miraculous healing. And it wasn't just now for Elijah, it was for the widow.
Yeah.
Okay. Because the story is he comes and he's like, hey, can you give me something to drink? Oh, and while you're at it, could you please make me a cake, bring me something to eat? And she was like, dude.
It's like, are you kidding me?
Like, I literally have enough flour to make some cake for my son. Cake, really patty bread, not cake like what we think cake. Yeah. And we're going to eat it and then we're going to die. And Elijah's like,
so uplifting.
Yeah. And Elijah's like, okay, yeah. So bring me some water and bring me some cake.
He said, yeah, okay, that's fine. Carry on.
And so when you look at this, you go, okay, but what God was wanting to do was to bring other people in to this season shift.
Yeah.
but also he was growing and adding another layer to Elijah.
Yeah.
And I don't know how many times I've read this story. I don't know how many times I've looked at this and I've read this and I'm like, how did I miss that? How did I miss these pieces of these things of what God was doing? Because at every step of the faith, he was upping the level of game for Elijah. Okay, well, you trusted me, you had faith, I provided for you, and I protected you. Now we're going to up at another level because now you're going to leave the protection and the safety of the ravine where nobody can find you because they've been searching the whole land for you because they want to kill you. Except for they won't kill you until you can speak that the rain's coming again. So then he goes to this widow and the widow's ready to die. She is a product of the drought. She's the product of not having the ability to provide for herself. Her husband is gone. She's taking care of her son. The water's dried up. All the stuff is dried up, but yet God sends the prophet to her and the son dies. And Elijah performs a miracle and brings the son back to life. And now, not only is he affected by what just happened, he's seen God move miraculously, but it also affects the widow woman and her son. And then the next scene shifts and we see Elijah and Obadiah, right? And then we see them there. And then this is so great. So let me flip the page here so that I get the story right. So it was after a long while, in the third year, the word of the Lord came to Elijah, go up and present yourself to King Ahab, right? So again, we see the season shift. Now, if I'm Elijah, I'm like, I'm not sure that I want to go back to King Ahab. But Elijah was, he didn't know that they were out to try to kill him. He was just like, I just spoke the word of the Lord and then he took me away and he kept me safe. And so, I don't know what's happening. I don't know what's happening. So the famine was severe because when drought happens, famine is severe. And that's what this widow, not only was she a widow caring for her son, but the drought, she was a product of this. There was nothing to sustain them because now there's famine and there's drought. There's no food. There's no water. And so Elijah's going to present himself and he comes across Obadiah and he's just like, is it really you, Elijah? And basically he's like, but don't go away because I got to take you to my master. She's like, no, I'm going to go. But there's this shifting of seasons for Elijah. He could have stayed with the widow at Zarephath. He saw God do miraculous things. And sometimes we do that. We want to stay in seasons where we're not supposed to stay in them. Okay, so let me finish just this and then we're going to have a great conversation. Okay, so it's a little bit of teaching and a little bit of talking this morning. Okay, so you can read it. 1 Kings 18 is where he meets Elijah and Obadiah meet. And then basically, then the next shift in scene is on Mount Carmel. Right. And so they're there. So what is the meaning of Mount Carmel? It's a vineyard. It's an orchard. It's a garden. So now Elijah has come from the ravine, the desert place where the brook dries up. Then he's with the widow at Zarephath, where he's being sustained in the midst of famine, in the midst of a drought. And now God is bringing him into this vineyard, this orchard, this garden. It's also the holy place or the holy mountain. This is where God brings him and he does this mighty feat of the fire and the Baal, the prophets of Baal, and he kills them all. And then Jezebel's like, I'm going to get you, my pretty. Oh no, I'm going to kill you. And so then he runs away and he runs to Horeb or Mount Sinai, which he flees there. It's the mountain of God, but Horeb, the area where he flees, is a dry, arid place. Now, I don't think that God's intention was for him to be in the holy mountain, this place that's a garden, that is a vineyard, that is an orchard, for him to then go into this dry, arid place like this, because he he was there to show God's power, to show God's might, to show who the one true God was. And then he got afraid and he ran and he was like having his pity party. This is why I can relate to Elijah. Okay. Because he had his pity party. He's like, I'm just going to die. Just let me die. I can't do anymore. And God doesn't hear me anymore. And she's going to kill me. And right. And he goes up there and God's like, get up from this place, get up onto the mountain of God. I'm going to meet you there. Go and prepare yourself. So he goes up to the mountain and the angel comes and gives him food and sustains him, right? Goes up on the mountain.
Imagine that. God provides for him again.
What? Yeah. In the midst of his pity party, his midst of, I'm running for fear. Wait a second. You just killed 400 prophets of Baal by yourself.
And you're afraid of one person.
And you're afraid of a woman? The queen, Jezebel, like this kind of speaks a little bit about the spirit of Jezebel and how nasty and how hard it is for that thing when it comes against you, because you get discouraged, you get disappointed, you have some depression come at you, you're fearful, you're running for your life. See, we have to know our season. We have to understand what's going on in the midst of it, because the enemy is not going to back down. He is always going to be seeking, searching, trying to kill us, trying to destroy us. And if we give into even a second, that's what Elijah did. He gave in. Oh my gosh, she's going to kill me. Wait a second. You just single-handedly killed 400 prophets of Baal, and now you're running from one woman. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So he goes up onto this mountain, and then he's expecting God to show up in the ways that God has done in the past. And this is part of know your season. See, God showed him that he was faithful, that he would provide, that Elijah could trust him. He could walk in the miraculous. He showed him these things, but he wasn't looking for God to move in the new and the miraculous ways.
Yeah.
He was looking for how God had showed up in the past, in the history of Israel. But God was saying, I'm going to do something new here, and stop your pity party, because you're not the only one. Do you think that you're the only one that I have? No, I have a remnant of people, of my prophets, that I'm going to bring out when the time is right. But Elijah, you are not it. You're not the only one. Mm-hmm. But sometimes we can get so focused on the uncomfortableness of the shifting of seasons that we kind of miss the seasons. We miss it. We can be behind the times instead of in sync with the timing of God. But God's like, now get up and go back the way you came. This is important. So God comes out, he talks to him, delivers a message, says, oh, you're not the only one. Now get up and go back the way you came. And who does he come across? Elisha. And he throws his mantle over Elisha. And Elisha says, okay, let me go say goodbye to my family and my friends, and then I'll come with you. And he's like, dude, if you can come with me right now, then you have no business following me. And he's like, okay, well, let me kill my oxen then. What was he doing? He's like, I'm not going back to this. I'm not coming back to this. I'm going to kill my oxen. I don't care. I'm going to follow you. And so he goes. And then we begin to see how there's this shifting and this transition part. And Elisha is now mentoring Elisha, and God called him to go out and to do this thing. So let's talk about knowing your seasons. Okay. So I don't know about you, Brandy, but there's been times in my life where I knew God was doing something, but it was so uncomfortable that I didn't want to do it. Yet I knew I was supposed to do it, but it was more like he was dragging me, and I have skid marks from my feet. Okay. Mm-hmm. So one of those times was when I was on staff at a church. And I knew that I was supposed to make the transition to go to work for this ministry, but it was a huge step of faith, because the ministry was sustained by donations from people or from the individual when we would go and speak or sell product. Yeah. And so it was this huge faith walk of not that necessarily my paycheck at the church was guaranteed, but there was more people were giving into the church.
There was a bit more stability.
That's a great thing. And so I remember talking to my boss at the time, who were still really good friends. And I said, okay, I think this is what I'm supposed to do. And she's like, yeah, I think it's what you're supposed to do. And I was like, okay, so this is what I'm supposed to do. She's like, yeah, I really think this is what you're supposed to do. I'm like, are you going to be okay? And she's like, I'm going to be okay. And I'm like, okay, then we're okay. And so there was like this transition because I had to find somebody to replace me. And there was a shifting of seasons, right? Like I was excited to do this until it came to this one part when I got afraid, because we came to the point and it was like, I don't know, there's probably 3 weeks left of my time at the church. And I don't know. I just went into her office and I sat down and I said, I feel like you're pushing me out. Like, I don't know. She's like, I am not pushing you out. But if you stay in this position, if you stay here, then this ministry can't go to the next level. And if you don't go to that next ministry, that ministry can't go to the next level. So I love you. And yes, I would want you to stay here, but you must go because you are holding us back and them back because you're not wanting to feel uncomfortable in this moment. But God is calling you to another level.
This comes back to there are people attached to your yes.
I know.
It's the same thing with seasons. Mm-hmm. If you refuse to shift your season, God can't teach you the things that he wants to teach you. And if you don't learn the things that God wants you to learn, how are you going to be able to step forward into the next season that may have somebody that you reach out to, or that you are called to talk to, or train, or, like mentor?
Yes,
this is, it gets into such a snowball effect. Because if you know your season shift is coming, but you're like, okay, yeah, but like, this is a really comfortable season for me. So like, if we could just like not go into the dry desert season, or if we could just like not go into the storm season, if we could just stay here in the comfort, you're not going to grow.
Wow.
If you stay in your season past your time, you will not grow.
Not only will you not grow, but you'll stagnate. And also, if your yes is attached to somebody else coming in and filling in behind you, then they get stuck too. Yeah, this is one of those things where we have to be so fine-tuned and hear what the Lord is saying, because a lot of times, like for me to move out of that position was so somebody could come in and take it to the next level. Not that I couldn't, but somebody else in that next season was fit for that, because I was supposed to go and step into this next season with this other ministry, which then by doing that and taking that step of faith, that's where I was like fast tracked in the prophetic. I was speaking, I was ministering. I had all these skills to really take her product to the next level. Yeah. All of these things that I was able to do for her translated into when I started my own ministry. And it was like, the Lord was like, if you'll stay the course, Debbie, if you'll shift when I say to shift. And I have to say, I wish that I would have learned this a long time ago, but we have to trust God and know the seasons and know the shifting of when he's calling us to shift in those things. And so some of you may be thinking right now, well, what does that mean for me? I think it means, what has God said to you, and have you done it?
I think it's important to take time and just ask God, hey, am I in the right season? Is there something that I need to do? Is there something that you're trying to do that I'm not listening to, or I'm not hearing right? Just take that time, have a moment with him, go back to the guided encounter, which is a podcast that we did. So you know how to do it. And if you don't, just go listen to it and walk yourself through guided encounter and ask God, am I in the right season? Mm-hmm. If I'm not, how can I get there? What do I need to do? How can I get out of the way so that you can do what you need to do through me?
Mm-hmm. And one of the things too, is we always think that the desert seasons are bad. Actually, they're not.
They're not. They're hard. They're not bad.
They're not. What they do is they're preparing us for the upgrade that's coming when we come out. And we look, Jesus was sent into the desert for 40 days before he started his ministry. Right. And so the desert season is a season of preparation to release you into your next season. And we get okay. I'm sorry. I'm going to go here. We get stuck. I just stole
you. Did my thing.
I did your thing. is that we look at other people's seasons and we want to be in their season instead of staying in our season and staying focused on our season. And we're looking at them going, well, I want to do that. So I'm just going to bypass this, or I'm going to short circuit this. And there is no short circuiting in the kingdom of God. Like, your character is more important than you doing the stuff, because if God can't trust your character, then you aren't actually going to be walking in the full power and authority of the stuff that he's called you to do. And if you're so busy looking at somebody else's season and wishing you were in that season instead of walking through your process and your season, then
what do you say in the beginning of your classes? Not to compare yourself to people, because comparison is the thief of joy.
And here's the other thing too. Don't go looking at somebody else's stuff and judge them because you don't know where they've walked. I mean,
you don't know what they've done. You don't know what God has trained them to do. You have no idea. Listen, stay in your lane.
Stay in your lane.
God has you in your lane for a reason.
Yeah. And it's so easy to make assessments and judgments when we read things on Facebook, or we see things on social media, or we go to church and we see somebody and it looks like everything is all roses and they're all happy and they're looking good, but we don't really know what they're going through. We don't know if there's something they're struggling with and they come to church and they look like they have it all together. We don't know the path that they walk to get there. We don't know what it is, but you cannot bypass your own journey of what God is wanting to teach you. And we have to know our seasons, and we have to submit to the season God has us in.
Yes.
That's the big thing. If Elijah didn't go to the ravine and be fed by a raven and drink from a brook, then they would have found him. They could have killed him. They could have put him in jail. They could have tortured him. They could have done anything to try to get him to take back what he had spoken. Instead, he had to trust God, that God was going to provide for him in that season. I don't think he liked being all alone in the bottom of a ravine with a brook that he's noticing, think the water's trickling a little bit less today, right? But he was still trusting God. And then when the season time to shift, God shifted the season and took him out of isolation and put him somewhere where he could affect change, but also he was still learning in the process because he brought a boy back to life. There are things in our lives that if we don't recognize what season we're in, and we don't want, I hate change. I do. I mean, I'm one of those people like, oh, change, that's a 4-letter word, but it's not really a 4-letter word, but that's how it felt. Right.
Yeah.
And so it was like, I don't want this. And then I realized actually change is inevitable. It's how we grow. It's how we mature. It's how we begin to walk out. It's how God heals those broken places in us. It's how we really do life and partner with him in the kingdom.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
And, so when you're doing this guided encounter and you go back and you ask the Lord, where am I at? And making sure that, you finish the year well. And then really, what season does God have you in? And then don't judge other people's seasons and don't want to be in other people's seasons, right? Because it is so dangerous, because that's where jealousy and envy, and that's where pride comes in. And it just opens the door to the enemy. Yeah. And we just really need to know our season. And Elijah, he knew his season. Even when he was running, he knew he wasn't supposed to run. And what did God say? Come back up to the mountain. Come back up and see me. Come back up here and we're going to have a little conversation.
Honestly, I think the majority of the time we know too.
Yeah. Yeah.
We don't want to admit it to ourselves.
Yeah. I think the sad part of missing or not paying attention to our season sometimes is when our yes is really attached to somebody else doing something. Like we're supposed to partner with somebody, or that we're supposed to do something with somebody, and that other somebody doesn't say yes.
Yeah.
Because that's happened.
That's happened
to you. It's happened to me.
It's likely happened to everyone. I think that's the problem is that like, that should not be the norm. I personally would like to strive to be the person who's always there. If it doesn't turn out, I showed.
Yeah.
If it doesn't work, I was there. Like, it wasn't because of me.
Yeah.
I said yes. I obeyed. I stepped out. I moved forward, you know? And like, God's plan is still going to come to pass regardless of whether or not you're a part of it. But don't you want to be a part of it?
Yeah.
Because it was his plan for you.
Yeah.
Now somebody else is going to take it.
Yeah.
Or get the, you know.
I think that here's the really exciting thing. I was talking on a podcast, not a podcast, actually, it was a show, a daily show my friend has, last week. And it was, you know, had I been obedient to the Lord to go to this event, these individuals would have been in my life years before they were. But God is like, I need to connect you, Debbie, with this group of people. So I'm going to open the door for you to write a book with Chosen, the publisher. And this one person is going to interview you. And then you're going to actually get connected to these people. And when I started to put all the pieces together, I realized I missed something because I didn't want to go to an event because I was like, I don't want to be with a bunch of these people and I just want to stay home and I don't want to do this. I was having kind of an Elijah moment. And I remember like I was having my own issues at that time, just in ministry and all kinds of stuff. And I was like, I don't want to go with a bunch of people. And so, but God has a way of bringing it back around. Mm-hmm. Like, okay, Debbie, you didn't go do this thing. And we think, oh, well, going to an event, is that really wrong? Not necessarily, but I felt like I was supposed to go and then I disregarded going, but God brought me back around. And now this group of women that I would have met there, God brought it around and now they're part of my tribe. They're part of my family. And so we have to know our seasons. We have to listen to what God is saying. We have to discern and we have to not just hear him, not just see what he's doing, but we have to walk it out in obedience. And don't be afraid of the shifting of seasons. No matter how much I hate change, no matter how much I hate it, the seasons change for a reason. It means there's growth. It means God's adding to us.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts as we wrap up today's podcast?
No, I think that's pretty much it.
I think it was it. I think you added some really good things. We're going to have to do something. Did we ever do a podcast about somebody's attached to your yes?
No, I think it's just been in a lot of them.
It's been a lot of them. It's kind of a common thread. And here's why is because we're not meant to be lone rangers. We're not meant to do it alone. We're part of a body. The body is connected. We don't have disconnected fingers and we don't have eyeballs hanging out away from the body. Like we're all supposed to be connected. And so our yes is attached to somebody else.
Here's the crazy thing. God wants a relationship with us, but he also wants us to have a relationship with others.
Yes.
And if you are just walking along this lonely road forever and you're not talking to anybody and you don't have a relationship with anybody, you literally go crazy.
Yeah.
The whole point is that we're meant to be together and having purposes. Like, this is like blowing my mind kind of stuff. But like when God aligns two purposes and people come together and work towards his glory, it's insane the amount of things that could happen.
Oh, absolutely. And you never know what lives are going to change and how you're going to affect that and how your life is going to change and how the other person's life is going to change, not to mention the impact that you are going to have. It's like a ripple effect, right? When you're obedient and you drop that rock in the pond, then there's the ripple effect and you just don't know how far it's going to go. I want to say this too, because the last couple of years with COVID has really been crazy and people are like back in the state that we came from, that we lived in for 24 years. A lot of people had to make a choice, and it was their choice. I think everybody should have a choice. I'm not for or against. I'm just saying people need to have their own choice, but the choice was taken away and they lost their jobs. Their season was shifting, but some people made the choice because of fear to do something that they never would have done. And other people said, no, I'm going to stand upon what I believe God is calling me to do. Yeah. And then talking with those people, they said, I lost my job, but it actually brought me into a season of fulfilling my greatest heart desires. And I've started this job, this new business, or I'm doing this venture, or I partnered with somebody else. And so sometimes things look like they can be bad and we're being forced into a corner, but yet on the other side of knowing our season and beginning to open it up, it actually opens us up into what God's best is for us.
Yeah.
And so sometimes those things are allowed to happen to actually shift us into our next season. And I'm really excited for my friends. I mean, it was sad. It was heartbreaking to watch them walk through this process and then not get their stuff. But they pivoted. Like that's what we would say in the business world. You pivoted and you did well, but really it was, they knew the season and God was shifting them and they were paying attention to that. Mm-hmm. So I think there's nothing else that we need to say today. I think that's kind of it. I just kind of want you to just kind of pray with God, like spend some time with God, ask him where you're at. Is your season shifting? Is there some uncomfortableness? Are you feeling anxious? What are you feeling? And then why? And then walk that out with the Lord, because he may be shifting your season. Mm-hmm. He may be taking you into something different, and we need to be paying attention to that. But in this season, as the word that I shared last week for 2022, is so important that we be discerning of what God is saying. Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, thank you guys. I hope that you had a really good time today. So thank you for listening to Dare to Hear the podcast, where we encourage you to dare to hear the voice of God. I'm Debbie Kitterman.
And I'm Brandon Kitterman. If you guys were encouraged in any way, we want to hear about it. We have a couple ways you can reach us. You can reach us on social media. You can email us at info@dare2here.com. Also, if you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and like and subscribe so you can hear more of us. Or I guess see more of us. Yeah. And if you're wherever you're listening, just go ahead and leave us a review.
And tell your friends all about it. And then don't forget to sign up for the Releasing God's Heart Through Hearing His Voice Dare to Hear classes beginning January 18th. Invite your friends. It's not too late to sign up, and then get a copy of this book as we're going to journey together for 8 weeks. You get me 2 hours every Tuesday night, January 18th through March, and we're going to have a blast, and we're going to go deeper. We're going to fine tune. And we look forward to having you join us next week on another episode. I have some really great guests for you. And as I've said before in December, that January is to be joyous January. And so my next 2 guests for the next couple of weeks, they're going to talk about joy, their books. And it was just really cool the way that the Lord orchestrated these conversations with them. And one book is called Joy, with Georgie and Banoff. I was really excited about that one. I mean, it was so excited to, he got sick and then he was on vacation and then we were moving across the country. And so I was supposed to interview him a year ago.
Wow.
And God made it because he wanted to emphasize joy in January. God is just amazing. Know your season. Happy New Year. And I look forward to having you join me next week. Until then, God bless and goodbye.
Bye.
I'm not in the thunder, I'm not in the rain, I'm not in the winds of the hurricane. Look to me, I'm drawing in the air. I have called you, dare to hear. 'Cause there's peace in my presence, so do not fear. Oh, do not fear. I have called you. In the fall